Hello everyone and welcome to the Proudfoot podcast. Today on our 32nd episode, we are going to talk about encumbrance rules in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. So let's get started. First off, encumbrance rules are probably the least thought about rules in D&D, and they're the most forgotten because typically speaking, you don't need to worry about your encumbrance. Your encumbrance rules as written is 15 times your strength score. So even if you have a strength score of 10, you can still carry 150 pounds worth of stuff. That's why when you look in chapter 5 and see all the equipment, it always writes out the pounds that this item weighs, and that's because of your encumbrance. So armor is probably the heaviest thing you're going to have on you. Literally, it's going to be on you most of the time. And then other than that, it's going to be things in your backpack, your weapons. These are the other things that are going to add to your encumbrance. So once you hit 15 times your encumbrance, you're not allowed to carry any more stuff. That's the rule in D&D. It's very simple, and there is an alternate rule, which we're going to talk about at the end of this episode if you want some more nuance in your carrying capacity. On top of that, we also have rules for pushing and lifting. So if I'm just picking something up or if I'm pushing something across the ground, I can actually carry more, but I take a massive movement penalty. My movement reduces to 5 feet. However, I can double my encumbrance simply for the purposes of lifting and pushing stuff. Now, the final thing about encumbrance is size and strength. So if you are large, huge, or enormous, you basically get to keep doubling your carrying capacity. So if you're large, it's doubled. Then if you're huge, it's 4 times. And if you're gargantuan, it's 8 times. Now, this also goes the other way, but luckily, small and medium, it's the same. It's always 15 times your strength score. However, if there's a tiny creature, which is the smallest size in D&D, then it's halved. So that's how your carrying capacity scales with the size of your creature. Okay, so those are the base rules, and they're pretty simple, and almost everyone uses them just because it's really easy, convenient, and you don't have to do a lot of math mid-session when you're picking new items up to figure out how your encumbrance is changing. But if you would like to do these calculations and your group is very savvy with math and liking to keep track of all the items they have, which is totally valid way to play and how I've played in some groups with a lot of math-oriented people when they want to figure out exactly how much the stuff they're carrying weighs to see how much it'll slow them down, D&D does have variant rules as well on page 175. For the variant encumbrance rules, it says that you ignored the strength requirement for heavy armor. So if you recall back when we did the episode on heavy armor, if you are wearing certain types, you need to have a strength score of 13 or 15. Otherwise, you suffer a -10 movement penalty. So rather than having that rule, it takes it away, and now we have the variant encumbrance rules, which say that when you are at 5 times your strength score, you are encumbered. So your speed is slowed by 10 feet. Then once you hit 10 times your strength score, you are now heavily encumbered. You're slowed by 20 feet, and you're disadvantaged on all ability checks and attack rolls. Additionally, you're also disadvantaged on strength, dexterity, and constitution saving throws. So being heavily encumbered is not so great. And then same as the simple rules, once you hit 15 times your encumbrance, that's the max you can carry, and you have to carry less than 15 times your strength score. So those are the variant encumbrance rules. It's a little bit more crunch for the math-oriented people, and if it's something that your DM wants to play with, then, it's something to be aware of. But most of the time, like I said, most groups just stick with the simple encumbrance rules, and you hardly ever have to think about this. Okay, that's everything I wanted to talk about in today's episode. Thank you again so much for listening to this week's episode of the Eddie Proudfoot podcast. If you enjoyed it, please follow us on Instagram, Spotify, or Twitter. And as always, may the gods have mercy on your soul.